Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to the 111 portal. And no matter when you're watching this video, the content is still going to be very relevant for you. But I wanted to record this because it's been top of mind for a little while, and it really is going to help you shift an attitude in real time. And if you have an attitude towards repeating patterns in your life, let's just say, this is going to bring in a higher point of perspective from further up on the spectrum of consciousness. And so if you are noticing repeat loop patterns, familiar cycles, familiar themes, the same kind of people showing up, the same kind of situations, scenarios, events showing up in your life, you're going to want to watch the entire video and come back to it quite a bit, because there's going to be some gold that I'm sharing with you in here. And, you know, offering this perspective of time as a spiral, that's the most important part here, because from a metaphysical and a unity consciousness perspective, time is not a straight line stretching endlessly forward. It's a spiral, an elegant, multidimensional dance that loops us back to ourselves again and again and again. And each loop is an opportunity to revisit familiar themes, relationships, experiences, but from a slightly different and higher, hopefully, vantage point. The spiral teaches us that life is not about linear progress, but about deepening our understanding of ourselves, of our core wounding, and that's actually running the show of our lives, because it's the unmet part of self, the unloved part of self. We call it the part of self that exists in shadow. But this is always and ever the point of ourselves, the point of attention that is actually gearing us towards looking in a different direction, so that we can heal this familiar theme, so that we can embody higher frequencies of love. And the only way to do that is to embody the love when you revisit these familiar themes with compassion of self. Excuse me, I got a little cough, so I'm going to try to get through this without coughing. And I'm going to have a sip of water. So if you want to stick around and learn how to revisit parts of yourself with a different attitude, with more empowerment, seeing a higher vantage point perspective of you from the higher witness or observer self, then what you observe will change when you're able to do that. And I'm going to go through the ways that you do that. So if you are down like a clown, Charlie Brown, go ahead and hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button too if you like this content, you jive with my vibe. And this kind of content helps you. Guess what? When you like and subscribe, that helps the algorithm show it to other people who have a like-minded perspective and are broad-minded like yourself and full of love and compassion, and you want to see others do just as well as you're doing, then liking and subscribing this content really helps that happen. Circulate the love, that's what I say. So, I'm Catherine Massell. I am a mentor. I've been, let's just say, wearing many hats in the spiritual and metaphysical realms for almost 25 years now, and I love sharing this stuff. I love teaching it. I teach a really powerful course in embodiment of this kind of content I'm sharing with you today. Coherence program starts on January 15th. All that info is down below. And plus, stick around, because I'm going to plug a little something later on that's fun, a fun way to play with time. And since I'm coming up on my 53rd birthday, I've priced it at only $53, and it's really, really fun. I'll talk about it in a minute. But first, all that stuff's out of the way. Let's get into it. So, the spiral in action. So if we can think of revisiting patterns, revisiting unmet or as yet fully, not yet fully loved parts of self is another way to think about it. The spiral of time helps us do that. It's a tool, in other words. And in fact, time is a tool created by humans to help us measure our experience of this life, because you can only track what you measure, and time is just really a tool that is created by humans in this 3D reality realm where we're playing with time and space to kind of track our movements through different levels of consciousness, different attitudes, behaviors, ideas, beliefs about ourselves, different layers and levels, meeting ourselves deeply with more love. Time helps us kind of track that. And so you can develop a different relationship with time right now. And in fact, if you watch this entire video, you absolutely will. It's a foregone conclusion. So this pattern that you're revisiting, maybe right now, imagine for a second a spiral staircase. So if you can picture in your mind a spiral staircase that winds up. And as you ascend, the scenery repeats, right? But each time you see the scenery, you're higher up. It's offering you a different perspective or vantage point. Without a shift in perception, though, it may feel like you're stuck in a loop. The same arguments in relationships, the same struggles with your finances, the same fears about your worthiness. But the truth is that you're never in the same place twice. Even though it feels like these themes, people in your life, situations, they might seem really familiar, but you're always greeting them with a different version of you. At moment to moment, cells are dying and being replaced. You are different moment to moment. And the only constant is the you who is meeting the experience. So this is where the metaphysical magic really takes place. When the observer changes, the observed changes. So this is the key, this is the cornerstone to breaking the loop and moving from frustration and saying to yourself, oh, not this again. And instead being able to say, look how far I've come. Okay? So if you really want to shift that, stick around and I'm going to tell you more. So if you approach each repeating pattern with the same kind of frustration, the same kind of resignation, here we go again, right? You anchor yourself into the illusion of stagnation. That's a mental construct. Everything is in a stage of growth all the time. There's nothing you need to do to spur that on, to coax that forward. Growth is the natural order of things, okay? So stagnation it's a fiction of the mental faculties. It's not real. It's illusory. You can't be stuck, even though it feels that way, and you can have, just because you have the experience of something doesn't necessarily ground it into fact or truth, okay? Because those are two things that we need to be able to parse out moment to moment. We might feel certain things, experience certain things, and we're convinced that this is the truth of who we are, but is it a universal truth? Is it a fact overall for everybody? No. It's relevant to our experience. So if you can meet even what seems like a very familiar event with a different attitude, a different energy, let's just say curiosity with compassion, the spiral then reveals its purpose, to show you how much you've grown and to offer a chance for even greater growth, greater alignment with your higher self. So here's how you start shifting that attitude. So number one, when you notice a familiar theme, a familiar pattern emerging, just pause. Give it some space. Because what we do and what anchors that old self, let's call it the 1.0 version of self, into just being the same pattern we enter into again and again, we usually react right away as the old version of self. Instead of pausing, taking a breath, giving the whole thing some space. Imagine yourself like physically pulling back from this thing so that you feel the separation between you and the event itself. Because when we're acting as the old version of self, we feel like there is no separation. The event is us. The situation is us. It's not. It's just a happening. And what's happening doesn't belong to you unless you make it so. So, pause and reframe. Take a breath. Imagine actually pulling yourself away from the event. This allows you to instantly go into higher observer mode. So from a metaphysical standpoint, it's like going into the higher witness of who you are, where you get to see the truth of the situation, not things as they look. If you think you are merged with the situation, you think the happening, the event, the person that you're dealing with is you have to be able to pull yourself back from that. There's a beautiful Zazen technique that I'm going to be sharing in Coherence program, which, as I mentioned, starts on January 15th. It's a way to create this boundary that, yes, with another metaphysical principle that I I teach, and is really the premise, along with the mirror principle for coherence program, that everything and everyone is you under different circumstances. That's basically the unity principle. That it's all, you are the absolute is you. You are source, God is you. It's all one. But what's really important is that at the same time, we're having this duality game that we're playing. We're pretending to be, this small fractal of consciousness in a meat suit. So we're playing with duality, and we have to remember that we are playing that game. We are not, that's not the finite version of us. It's a temporary version of us. Us in our meat suit, right? Us playing in a human suit. It's our soul, our spirit having an experience as a human, but that's not the totality of us, right? It's a role we're playing. And so even in the argument you're having, it's a role you're playing. In the situation that seems to be cropping up again and again and again, it's a role you're playing. You get to change the role. And how do you do that? Your perception of what's happening. And you can only do that first and foremost if you can pause, take a breath, pull yourself back a little bit, go into that higher witness or observer. What is this showing me about my evolution? How can I meet this with more love than I did the last time? And here's the kicker, kids. That's really the answer right there. How do I greet this familiar theme, situation, even this person, with more love than I did the last time? Even if you're having arguments with someone on an ongoing basis, and you have these constant altercations or misunderstandings, disagreements, etc., if you can shift in the moment just a little bit, like how can I just pause and just be like, this person is just trying to figure out life in the same way that I am, and maybe we're coming at it from different ways, but that doesn't mean that this person I'm interacting with isn't just a soul playing with the same meat suit that I am and trying to figure shit out moment to moment, day to day. So, we're misunderstanding each other. The second you remove blame or resentment from that, you move into more love. And you start to embrace and embody that higher aspect of yourself. Imagine yourself actually stepping up a stair on that spiral staircase, occupying a higher vantage point, because that's really what's happening. Okay? So number 2, learn to embrace gratitude. It's the easiest thing for us to do, really. And I know it gets overexposed in the world of manifestation and law of attraction, practice gratitude, but what is different about embracing gratitude rather than practicing gratitude is that seeing every spiral loop is a gift. Like being able to have the awareness that you are on a spiral, that you are experiencing back and forth these different parts of the spectrum of consciousness, depending on where our attitude is, depending on how much love we have for ourselves or what's going on in the moment. It's an awareness that we can occupy when we pause, we take the space of giving some gratitude to the moment, like I'm being shown something here. This is for me, in other words. And when you start asking, like, how is this for me? That's embracing gratitude. Even when you're having an altercation with another person, asking, how is this me? In other words, you're asking, like, how is this a reflection of just in the outer world, something that's pointing back at something in myself that I don't like, that I haven't fully embraced about myself, that a part of me that I haven't met fully with love. So when you start asking, how is this me? How is this for me? That's a way of embracing gratitude, because it's saying, this is a gift. And what I call these moments are gifts in the garbage, because it might be a shitty thing that's happening, but that's just our judgment of it. Instead of you assigning or casting forth some sort of blame or trying to label or judge a situation, which is what we do when we react, is the old version of self. What if, again, you could just meet it with curiosity and say, this is happening for my growth. This isn't hindering my growth. This thing, this happening, this event, this altercation, this argument, it's not happening to hinder my growth. It's actually happening as an instrument for my growth. And if I'm willing to see it from that higher vantage point, then the answers start to come. The solutions start to show up. Synchronicity reveals itself. And it's not like you're creating any synchronicity or any great event. You're discovering it And the only way to discover it is to, again, rise up on that spiral staircase. Meet yourself from a different place. And if the answer is always going to be meeting yourself or any situation or any person with more love, that will always open up the higher vantage point of perspective. Always. Number 3. So we already talked about this, but I wanted to summarize this in a more complete, concretized way. Adopt the observer's perspective. So imagine, yourself as the loving witness of your own life. And when you pull back, you give some space to what's happening. You recognize that I am not this event, I'm not this person, but it is a reflection of something within myself, saying or crying out for some acknowledgement, something to be witnessed, something to be embraced, something to be aware of, right? And when we can do that in that higher perspective, that observer vantage point, we're moving into our God self. We're seeing something that's a temporary situation that's happening because we're playing with space and time from a different, higher vantage point. And this reflection that you're really interfacing with, it's not a problem. It's not a problem. That's the way the old version of self would frame it. It's actually a gift. And it's maybe a gift in the garbage because it doesn't feel so great in the moment. But the second you stop assigning any feeling to it, then the thoughts that would occur as a result of the feeling in the past, like over and over again, we get represented, or we have a representation of a similar theme. Isn't it always that initially, if we're not following these steps, we have the same feeling response to it? Like, oh shit, we're like bracing for impact. We shrink, or we contract, or we get angry, or we get sad, or we get mad, or we get filled with rage, or whatever. And when we do that, and we let the feeling take us over in a way where it's unconscious, then any thoughts related to that kind of concretize that former 1.0 version of self will emerge. So breaking that pattern and being in the observer's perspective in that moment is about saying, okay, I'm going to feel the feeling. I'm going to let it move through me. But I'm going to notice where any thoughts are cropping up, and then I'm just going to catch them like a net. That's not true. That's not a fact. That's not always and ever going to be this outcome. I can change it. I can change how I feel in this moment. But don't try to swat away at the feeling. Instead, how is this for me? How is this me? What am I feeling here? Can I allow the feeling to just move through my body without feeling I'm captured by it, like a deer in the headlights? And where this thing has the power, I'm going to move into my observer's perspective. Then that means I'm the one who is the master of the situation. I'm in control. I have emotional mastery. And that doesn't mean trying to ignore or swat away at or kill that feeling. It actually means going into a place of detachment from it. Again, you might think that that's like swatting away at it or ignoring it. No, detachment, especially in the way that I teach this and teach my clients how to do this, and it's very successful, is being able to let the feeling move through you without attaching any thoughts to it. Because the second you learn that kind of detachment, then the feeling is just a feeling. And it can have its course, it can have its movement, and it feels it can go through its completion, and then it's done. And what's really surprising to people when I take people through this process, I call them surrender sessions, sometimes that takes 30 to 40 seconds to do. But it's because we've never been able to sit with this fully up until now and just let that natural progression happen of the feeling being the feeling, letting the feeling happen, and not be attached to it, not assign any identifying factors to it or defining factors. It doesn't have to say anything about us. We can just let the feeling be the feeling. And once you learn how to do that, talk about emotional mastery. It's an incredible feeling, because it's liberation, it's relief, it's freedom, okay? So let's talk about it in some very real world context, okay? So let me give you some practical examples. So in relationship dynamics, okay, you find yourself in yet another disagreement with your partner about feeling unheard. So instead of thinking, why does this always happen to me, right? Here we go again. Pause. Give it some space. Imagine yourself literally pulling back and then reflect. The last time this happened, I didn't voice my needs very clearly. Or, I got angry and upset and I felt like here's another example of me being invisible to someone, me being misunderstood by someone. When you start telling a story like that, then you're staying in, or you're convincing yourself in that illusory place of stagnation. You're convinced that like, I'm stuck, I'm never going to go anywhere. That's not true. It's not a fact. It's your perceptual bias based on what happened before. But if you're willing to challenge yourself, to have a different response than you did before, then that looks like, how can I honor myself more lovingly this time? By taking a breath, even if it takes 2 seconds to do, reflecting on, this is what happened before. And even though it feels familiar, I can have a new response this time. I can shift the pattern in a new direction. I can break the loop. And in fact, the only one that can do that, the only thing that can do that is me. By taking a higher vantage point, responding differently. And it could even be, if you're obviously in some sort of abusive relationship, you want to seek professional help with that, and you want to, maybe get more eyes on this thing than just like, oh, I need to change the conversation. That's obviously a different, more extreme example. If you're having any kind of physical or verbal mental abuse going on, that's a different ball of wax. But if it's something that like, we keep having these disagreements, we keep having these misunderstandings, these miscommunications. If you're willing to just say, hey, I hear you, but maybe I'm really not understanding you. Can we talk about this a different way? Instead of, letting it spiral out of control because your feelings are hurt, their feelings are hurt, right? And you can be the one that takes the high road on that. So with career or financial challenges, maybe you're facing a familiar challenge like struggling to meet a financial goal, making ends meet. And so instead of spinning out and having loads of self-criticism and feeling a lot of disappointment with yourself, this was a familiar theme for me for a really long time. And I see it in a lot of the clients that I work with. Like when things aren't working out, it's like we use that as a measuring stick and a reflection in the outer reality to say, this is another opportunity for me to be disappointed in myself. No, that's an association you're making. So you have to be very responsible and you have to be a really good steward of when you're making those connections and associations. That's on you. The meanings, labels, judgments that you're assigning, that's on you. It's not inherently true. It's not inherently a fact. But you're deciding to opt into that story again. You can break with any part of that fabric anytime. You can start unraveling those threads like a sweater that's got a loose thread and you start to pull it apart. The same is true when we take something that's just one part of a story and we're willing to unravel it, we're willing to question it, we're willing to put it under, a more magnified lens or scope of perusal, and we're able to say, yeah, that's not true. That's not inherently factual. That's not universally true, meaning it's true for me and true for everybody. It's part of my story, and I'm willing to let go of part of this story now. So you get to ask, what beliefs or actions am I revisiting here? How can I approach this from trust and abundance now instead of fear? How can I shift my perspective into thinking that, I don't really have to do anything to create the life that I want. And this is controversial for a lot of people and it kind of triggers people. But just for a second, and hey, you don't have to believe anything that I say. In the last video I did, I said, take what resonates and leave the rest. Use what works for you right now and leave the rest. And maybe come back to it and another part will, it be more resonant for you. And that's okay. Take what resonates now and leave the rest. And here's the thing, you don't have to believe anything that I'm saying. You don't. But I will tell you that what I'm sharing with you here is the exact stuff I used to help my clients and continue to use to help my clients move through their core wounding, move through the things that, are their story that binds them into this feeling of stagnancy or stuckness, which is really just a fiction because you can never be stagnant, you can never be stuck. But we can go through these loops. That's still growth. But if you're greeting yourself on these loops the exact same way you do every single time, expect more of those repeating cycles, those familiar rhythms of your life. And you'll, yes, have an opportunity. Every single time you meet yourself again on the spiral of time, it's incumbent upon you to see it as, I'm meeting myself anew, even though it feels familiar. I can treat this as, this is me revisiting, let's just say, a younger self who was asking for love and didn't know how to give that to herself. How can I nurture and reassure myself, that part of me now? And so if you're really dealing with like self-worth, and you have an inner dialogue that's just constantly, you're berating yourself, you're discounting yourself, you feel a disappointment in yourself, and your inner dialogue, the way you talk to yourself in your own head, reflects all of that. There's a sense of unworthiness resurfaces. And if you're greeting that with more disappointing thoughts about yourself every single time, you're just corroborating an old story. But you could see it as, when this comes up anew, it's an opportunity to step into a new version of you. It's an opportunity to walk through a new threshold and leave those old familiar themes and ideas and assumptions, beliefs, and attitudes behind once and for all. You could do that. It's possible. I help people do this. This is what I do. So instead of resisting that feeling of disappointment or that feeling of unworthiness, that feeling of, God, this again, here we go again, take a moment, pause, give yourself that space, and realize that when you have the feeling and it goes unnoticed, what's happening is, on an unconscious level, when the feeling comes up, we don't want to feel pain. Of course we don't. We don't want to be uncomfortable. We want relief. We want ease. We want freedom. And so we think, in order to get that, I'll swat away at the feeling. I won't let the feeling come up. And so what happens is the feeling cannot resolve itself. The feeling, just like you go through cycles, we all go through cycles, and in fact, the rhythms of the universe are all cycles and spirals. So is true of an emotion, a feeling state. It needs to go through a cycle of completion. And what so many of us do, because we fear pain, we fear being in a place of discomfort, we'll let that process be stopped by having a thought come right up, and then the thought in our mind, our neural pathways, the thought, and in the heart too, becomes associated with the feeling. So a lot of ways people try to do this is they try to just put in affirmations and have different thoughts, right? Makes sense. You have a shitty thought, swap it out with a better one. Okay, but that's only half the job completed. You have to make the association that when I have this shitty thought, it's because I'm feeling shitty in this way. I'm feeling a disappointment in myself. I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling fearful. I'm feeling sad. And the thought will point back to the feeling. But if we're just dealing with just the thought, and we try to just change the thought, we don't make the connection with that feeling, that associated feeling, and we just let the feeling just hang out there, and it'll keep coming up again and again and again. Trust me, it will. Until you make that association that I not only need to change the thought, I need to go back to that feeling and let it have its cycle of completion. And it sounds like a really simple thing. It actually is. It's not easy, but it is simple. When you get very well practiced in that, then when the thoughts come up, you can say, okay, this is coming because of this feeling. If I stop myself, give myself some space, even 30 to 40 seconds, and allow this feeling to move through completion, I stay in present moment awareness. I breathe through it. Then I'm going to change who I am. I'm going to actually move into a different identity of self. And it's not that I'm creating any of this. But when I allow this to happen, when I move into this higher emotional bandwidth and I let the old feelings run through their cycle of completion, what I'm doing is changing my point of awareness on the spectrum of consciousness. I'm moving up to a higher vantage point. That's how you do it. So I hope the way that I break that down makes sense to you, and please let me know in the comments. So when you view the spiral then from this higher spectrum of consciousness, a higher point on the spectrum of consciousness, I just explained how you do that. It's a sacred tool, and anybody has this ability, but you've got to be willing to go into that place of depth, because Without the self-realization and that association, making that conscious association and connection with, I might have this feeling a lot, but I am not this feeling. I have this thought a lot, but I am not this thought. Because you're not your body and you're not your mind. You're using a body, you're using a mind. You're an infinite, eternal creator being, using a body, using a mind, using thoughts, using feelings. And to do what? Help you expand and move into higher points on the spectrum of consciousness. So you see, all these things really are sacred tools for self-realization. Without the self-realization piece, you can't hope to occupy a higher point on the spectrum of consciousness. So you see, each loop is not a failure or a setback. It's an opportunity to love yourself more deeply. Yes, there it is again, that golden nugget, right? That vein of gold, as we're, trying to chip away at all the things and trying to chase and grasp at the external outcomes, hoping those are the things that will finally make us feel free, complete, worthy, right? They're just escape hatches. And if you're really good at being an escape artist, you're never going to be good at being embodied in who you truly are. So, what you're seeking with all those things that you think you want externally that are going to complete you because of external things like more money, a better soulmate partner, or a better career, or more clients, we've got it backwards. It's that when you can meet yourself on a deeper level and love yourself more deeply, no matter what you find there when you go deeply. If you can love yourself and witness yourself more compassionately, then the outer things show up. Because you'll already be in that place of joy. You'll already be in that place of abundance. You'll already be in that place of happiness. You'll already be in that place of self-realization. You'll already be in that place of self-trust. So then the outer mirror of reality will reflect that for you because of what you are projecting in your inner state. Understand that we're all just playing a game here. The universe itself is very playful. And you could think about this experience on the 3D reality plane as being in a giant sandbox. And these are your tools. These are your toys. When you do that, you start to see the intelligence of the spiral, which is only and ever bringing you back to this, the same lessons, if you want to call them that. I don't really believe in lessons, but the themes, okay? And the spiral is always asking you, are you ready to see this from a new angle? Those familiar situations, they're there to ask you, are you willing to see yourself with more love? That's the gift. And that's what allows you to say, look how far I've come. So let's reframe the spiral as we close out here as a celebration. It really is a gift. Every time you meet a pattern, you're meeting an old version of yourself. Okay? So instead of feeling defeated, marvel at the contrast. Be in awe that wow, there's such incredible intelligence in this universe that it can see, even if I'm not willing to see it on a conscious level myself, the universe loves me this much that it's going to come at me with this thing time and time again until I'm willing to say, I'm ready to meet myself with more love. I'm ready to view those unseen parts of self that I thought were so scary and the monster under the bed. That's how much the universe loves you. That's how much the infinite, absolute, the field, the order of all, the one all loves you. And the wisest of us will be able to see that and say, instead of being, a fork in the road that's just another obstacle, another hindrance, it's actually a gift. It's a gift that's showing me, here's an opportunity to be more compassionate and loving and accepting and kind to myself. That's a beautiful thing. And you'll become more aware now than ever that when you continue to meet familiar themes, and you will, because it's a spiral, then you'll be able to say, I remember when this theme came up last time and I responded this way. I'm going to respond even with more love this time. So for example, a once overwhelming sense of rejection now might feel like a gentle nudge to say, you know what? No, actually, I'm going to look at all the ways I'm doing things right. I'm going to look at all the things that I'm really good at. I'm going to look at all the ways that I love myself right now and that I love other people. And I am actually doing the great work on myself. I know there's a lot of people on the planet who aren't willing to do that, but I'm doing that. I'm willing to challenge myself. There's a quote, and I heard it today, and I'm going to share it because I love it so much. The most inspiring person is the one overcoming the fear of doing something, not the one who's excellent at it. Oh, isn't that beautiful? I'll say it again. The most inspiring person is the one overcoming the fear of doing something, not the one who's excellent at it. More of that. Chef's kiss. Isn't that so good? So this is an opportunity that, you can trust your inner worth when you feel that rejection, or a situation that feels rejecting, or a person that is seemingly, rejecting you. It's a nudge from the most loving aspects of the universe saying, this is an opportunity to trust yourself more. Trust your inner worth more. Trust your capability more. It's actually a lot more things that you're really, really good at, and the things that are sweet in your life than not. And if you decide to focus on that as truth, you'll find more and more of it. It's just a fact. Your reticular activating system will help you do it too, which is the most primordial part of the brain. A career challenge is another example that maybe it would derail you. Something that you've been trying to get good at, a skill set you're trying to develop, something like that. Now it just feels like an exciting puzzle to solve. Okay? Or anything that you might find challenging, like this is a puzzle to solve. And if it feels really, really frustrating, you start to equate too much of your self-worth with that, you can say, I'm going to table this for now until I'm in a better vantage point of myself. Because sometimes when we're looking at things like that and challenges, we're just in one of those, what I call fuck my life moments, where just a lot of things seem to be unraveling all at once and breaking down and whatever. That's growth too. Because in order to make way for new beginnings, we have to have endings. And this is where we are on this 111 portal. So all of this is a reminder of that. If you really encapsulate and summarize everything I'm talking about here, it's about embracing an ending. You could call it, embracing the 1.0 version of self, collapsing and dissolving, because you're ready to resolve the things that make up the identity of that version of self that you thought was you. But actually that version of self took on a lot of things, adopted a lot of ideas, adapted to a lot of beliefs that aren't really yours inherently. You kind of collected them over a lifetime. And that actually shrouded your true identity. So when you do the work that I'm offering forth here, what you're doing is removing those shrouds and your veils. And you're actually discovering. You're not creating this new identity of self. You're discovering who and what was already here. Just without all the bullshit on it. Right? Without all the false meanings and misperceptions and wrong assumptions. And this is what allows you to see, and actually saying this over and over again, look how far I've come, look how far I've come. Again, that creates a point of attraction within you. It creates a point of focus where you're going to basically be giving orders, directives to your own thoughts, to your own reticular activating system, to then focus like a divining rod on the things that are going right, on the things that, are circumstantial evidence to the fact of, look how far I've come. You start seeing that more in the mirror. And it's not like you're creating it, it's that you're discovering them. They've already been here. Everything's already here. Manifestation, creation is finished. Manifestation, if anything, it's not creating anything, it's discovering what's already here and moving into an identity of self in a kind of emotional bandwidth where you can see the things that weren't visible to you before because of the way you were feeling and the thoughts that you created and latched on to what you were feeling that aren't true. So this allows a shit ton of lessons. Again, I don't love using that word, but a lot of things to come together. Integration, processing. This will always and ever end up with you moving into a higher octave of being. That's your mastery on the spiral. If you can do this, if you can do what I'm laying out here, you are mastering the spiral. You are saying, there's no more painful endings. There's just things that need to give way for healthy new beginnings. And so from that higher vantage point, you get to use the spiral as a tool for your benefit, a tool for your advantage. So to just finally summarize all this stuff here, approach each event as a co-creative process. This event is here to help you co-create more of what you want to discover, which is your true identity. And it even can be like this curiosity piece again. I encourage curiosity. I encourage asking what if or how can I questions like, how can I sculpt this into something beautiful? How can I turn this garbage into a gift, right? Practice self-compassion. Make this a daily ritual. Self-compassion can look like, in other videos I've said, I take time out during my day, especially when I'm in a challenging moment. I allow myself to feel the feeling. I allow that cycle of completion to go through its natural cycle without me trying to latch on thoughts to it or try to stop or arrest the process. I go into present moment awareness. I go into breath. I allow the feeling to move. I feel it deep in my gut. Not necessarily in the heart, but if you really want to integrate and process the deeper feelings, they have to go through the solar plexus. They have to move up from the sacral, the solar plexus, and into the heart. And you can even imagine that as a cycle or a loop. And you'll feel it, like when you are really allowing the feeling to move through anger, fear, sadness, and you can feel it in the gut. In fact, when things feel off, they feel painful, you notice it in the gut first because it clenches. Notice that's where it starts. That's the genesis of the feeling. And a lot of us try to push it down, right? That's why a lot of us on this planet have digestive issues, by the way. That's a whole other talk. So notice as you allow the feeling, the cycle of completion to happen, it has a movement. It'll come up through the sacral. It'll come up through the solar plexus. Breathe through it. Stay present with it. And you'll notice as you are in that observer witness mode, letting the feeling happen, you'll feel yourself like, I can allow the feeling to happen. I realize, hey, I'm not this feeling. This isn't me. This is a feeling I have that for a long time I conflated it or it conceptualized it as me. It's not. This is a feeling that just wants to move through. So let it. And if you can do that, then you can ensure that as you do more and more of this, you can be more compassionate, more loving with yourself. Because you'll realize these things, these thoughts, these feelings, they aren't me. They're tools to help show me where I'm off at being me, my true identity of self that lives in ease and a kind of flow with a kind of feeling of relief and personal liberation. I can choose that. I don't need to create it. It's already here. The more I let go of these feelings and realize they're not me, the more I can choose that because I'll see it more often. So I just keep choosing over and over. This discovery of who you truly are will naturally happen. It'll take care of itself. The more you allow yourself to move through these feelings and detach them from any kind of thought that further identifies the feeling or the idea as being you. It's not. So when you have this kind of practice that you're doing on the regular, self-compassion is easy. Self-love is easy. Self-trust is easy. You may not believe it from where you are right now, but hey, you don't have to believe anything I'm saying. Like I said, take what resonates and leave the rest. But I am urging you to try this. Use the stuff that I'm putting forward here and see if it works for you. That's all you have to do. I'm not asking you to believe it. I'm not asking you to, pedestal place any of this stuff. But just try it. See for yourself. Be your own judge. And finally, in closing, celebrate your progress often. What I tell my clients all the time is there is no big or small. When you think of like a big goal or a small task completed, these are ways that we use to psych ourselves out from actually going after big things. And it's a way we use to diminish our importance when we've completed something small. Don't do that. You don't need to assign those labels or define things in that way. There's just expansions. There's just growth. And you're either embracing it and loving it and saying, yes, more of that, please, in the direction I want to go, where I prefer, yes, please, more of that. Or you're not doing that. Celebrate your progress often, anchoring the truth that you are always ascending. You're always moving up that spiral staircase. And the view is always going to be different. But that view that's incumbent upon you to change your own perceptual bias. You can feel like you're circling and you're just going in loops and there's nothing more to it than that. You can choose that. Or you can see, oh, I'm on a higher step now. What's the view from here? What can I take in? And each step of that spiral staircase is always and ever an invitation to love yourself a little bit more than you did on the lower step, and the step before that, and the step before that. So I hope that you embrace this. Try it. Let me know in the comments how this has helped you, how this has maybe brought in some new perspective for you. If you love this, then you'll love working with me in one of my programs and containers. So as promised, I did mention that if you want to play with time, and you want to play with, we'll call them twin selves, and they're just different avatars of you. Like I said, creation is finished. Everything is already here. So if you can imagine a higher ideal of yourself, let's just say a higher ideal that is already in her emotional or his emotional self-mastery. You have a prosperity mindset. There's versions of you already enjoying life. Like switching, getting the remote and switching the channel. It's like tuning into a program already in progress. I call it timeline jump avatars and playing with timeline jump avatars. And I created something a little while ago called Timeline Jump Avatar Mastery. And this is 12, I think, in total, timeline jumps, where you're in your optimal health and vitality, abundant wealth, in a fulfilling relationship. You have career path success. I call it the Platinum Standard Avatar. You have a prosperity mindset. You completely embodied emotional mastery. You have passion for the adventure of life. I call it the Sacred Fool Avatar. These are really fun. We're playing with you in your highest purpose timeline. They're all different timeline jumps that you can do. It's an online course. It's in my member vault. And I'll put the link down below so you can see it. So for the month of January, for the rest of the month of January, I normally offer it at $197, and it's just $53 because I'm turning 53 in about a week. And so you'll love it. I'll put some of the link down there and some of the comments from people who have taken these jumps. So also on the table, Coherence program starts January 15th. What I'm talking about in here is more of what we explore, and you get a lot more support and discussion from like-minded souls who are also going on this journey into their fathomless depths, plumbing the depths of greater self-love, because that's where all the magic happens. Everything you want hinges upon how much are you willing to love yourself, how much are you willing to accept yourself, how much are you willing to see yourself as the brilliant, beautiful creator being that you are. That's Coherence program, creating a dynamic equilibrium between your inner state and what you expect to see in your outer reality. So thanks everyone for watching. All those comments are down below. I love you all so much. Bye-bye.